Hey everybody, Tony Pellegrino with GenRight Off-Road, and we get a ton of questions about nitrogen pressure in your shocks or in your air bumps. I want to go over that today, explain what the theory is, why you need it, and how to do it correctly. Okay, the reason you want nitrogen over just putting air in your shocks is nitrogen is very stable. It's not sensitive to temperature, and it's dry, where standard air is going to vary with temperature, and it also has moisture in it. So you really want to use nitrogen in your shocks. So what the shock companies have done is once they bleed the air out of the shocks, then they charge it with nitrogen. And by charging it with nitrogen, it actually separates the oil from the air, or in this case, nitrogen. And there's a floating piston inside here. As soon as your oil foams, it's like having air in your brake system, and the performance is very bad. Okay, the easiest way to do this is actually just take your vehicle to an off-road shop that has the ability to charge your shocks with nitrogen. Otherwise, you're going to need a tank, a regulator, a hose, different fittings to reach the end of the Schrader. So I'm going to show you the way that I do it, and then we're going to talk about the different ways that it can be done and why you would do it differently. First off, you want your vehicle at full droop. That's ideal. So you put the proper amount of pressure in. You turn on your nitrogen tank, and you can see this gauge over here. This one shows you how much is in the tank. This one shows you what the pressure is set for the line. And right now it's at a little bit under 150. So we'll crank it up to 150 is where the gauge is right now. But here's what I can tell you. There's a loss in the hose. So you actually want to go up to about 160. So that's where we're set now. And then you'll remove the cap and you can charge the shock, okay? This also applies to the air bump as well. So I want you to start everything at 150. Any shock with a remote reservoir should be charged to a 150 PSI of nitrogen. I'm also telling you that's where I want you to start with the hydraulic air bumps. Everybody calls them air bumps, but they're actually a hydraulic bump, and they also get a charge of 150. They hold even less volume of nitrogen, so it's very important you do that properly. So how I normally do it is I don't check the actual pressure. I'm pretty familiar with where my pressures are at. You would use this if you were completely unfamiliar with where your pressure's at. So in this case, to charge this bump stop, you literally just hold this down on there for about 10 seconds and release, and that bump is charged now to what I had this set at, which is 150 PSI. All right, when I say 150 PSI, this is plus or minus 20 PSI. What you don't want is plus or minus 50 PSI. That's too big of a range. Really, it's not like it has to be within a pound or even 5 pounds. Just get it close so that you have even performance in all 4 wheels of the vehicle. Now I'm going to show you how to use this. This gauge, this little top piece threads in and out, and it depresses the Schrader. So we're going to make sure that's all the way up. Then we're going to thread this on here very carefully. Now remember, you got a lot of leverage on your Schrader valve, so you don't want to be messing that up or breaking it off in any way, because that would be very bad. So you thread this on here, and it takes an 11/16 wrench, at least the King one does, and you just snug it on here, okay? This is, don't get crazy, you'll break that thing off. Then you're gonna thread this down. You see the gauge come up right there? It's at 150. Now, to take this off, remember, you gotta unscrew this first, so you back this out where it's depressing the Schrader valve, and then you can release this and you don't lose any pressure out of the system. If you have this tool with the gauge, you can actually charge the shock or the bump stop or adjust the pressure on either one with this tool. It fits right onto the Schrader valve on each end of those units. And then, like I said before, you return the cap on here to make sure that no dirt gets in there and or it doesn't leak. Now, that said, on the air bump itself, I want you to go in 50-pound increments. So if you're out driving around and you notice that this is clean, then you need to go up 50 pounds. That's very important that you go up 50 pounds because you want some reserve on this shaft so that if you hit something bigger than what you intended, this will soak it up and not bottom out. If you have hard bottom outs, you are going to break something. You're going to break the bolts in the shock, you're going to break the shock mount, you're going to break the bump stop, you're going to blow out a wheel bearing, you are going to do damage that is very expensive. So you really need to stay on top of what this is charged at. If you clean it after you've gone up 50 pounds, then you need to go another 50 pounds. You can go all the way up to 300 PSI on a bump stop. So now you should never need to get that high. Even in all the racing I've done, the highest I've gone is 250. So that should be well within the range of what you're able to achieve here. All right, now we've got videos on just shocks and bump stop tuning because your dual rate shock can kick in at different stages. That's a whole nother video. You need to check that one out and see what we say about that. But this one was just on setting your pressures and the equipment that it takes. So I hope that was super informative and good luck out there.